Long lines and confusion clogged gas stations across Iran Wednesday as technical issues that Iran state media blamed on a cyber attack disrupted gasoline sales.
In the last 4 hours, I've gone to 15 different places, and I still haven't been able to get gas. And I've been standing here for 4 hours. We're waiting for the system to connect, and it still has not connected.
The chaos comes weeks before the second anniversary of deadly 2019 street protests that followed fuel price hikes. Iran says it is on high alert for online assaults, which it has blamed in the past on the United States and Israel. The U.S. and other Western powers, meanwhile, have accused Iran of trying to disrupt their networks. The oil ministry said only sales with smart cards used for cheaper rationed gasoline were disrupted, and clients could still buy fuel at higher rates. But Jafar Salari, director of National Iranian Oil Refining and Distribution Company, part of Iran's oil ministry, would not confirm that hackers were behind the chaos.
No, the cause has not yet been investigated. This is also being looked into so that we can see where the problem is coming from, whether it's a software issue or a cyber attack issue.
Industry officials told State TV that nearly half of gasoline stations had reopened as technicians rushed to activate manual settings after online functions were paralyzed by hackers. Iran has been targeted by a series of cyber attacks. In July, the Transportation Ministry's website was taken down by what state media said was a cyber disruption, and train services were delayed by apparent cyber attacks.
Latest news, Iran-U.S. relations. American B-1B bomber flies over Middle East amid Iran tensions. U.S. says it is in talks with allies on getting Iran to agree to a nuclear deal. And Iran suspects Israel and U.S. behind fuel cyber attack. This is the latest news. Associated Press headliner, American B-1 bomber flies over Middle East amid Iranian tensions, dated October 31st, 2021. The U.S. Air Force said Sunday it flew a B-1B bomber, strategic bomber, over key maritime checkpoints in the Middle East with allies, including Israel, amid ongoing tensions with Iran as its nuclear deal with world powers remain in tatters. The B-1B Lancer bomber flew Saturday over the Straits of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, through which 20% of oil traded passes. It also flew over the Red Sea, its narrow Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and Egypt's Suez Canal. Straits of Hormuz has been the scene of attacks on shipping boats blamed on Iran in recent years, while the Red Sea has been seen similar assaults amid an ongoing shadow war between Tehran and Israel. The Islamic Republic has denied being involved in any of the attacks, though it has promised to take revenge on Israel for a series of attacks targeting its nuclear program. Fighter jets from Bahrain, Egypt, Israel, and Saudi Arabia flew alongside the bomber. Iranian state media did not immediately acknowledge the flyover. Iran's mission to the United Nations in New York did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The flyover comes over after a pattern of such flights by nuclear-capable B-52 bombers since the Trump administration as a show of force to Iran. Trump in 2018 unilaterally withdrew America from Iran's 2015 nuclear deal, which saw Tehran agree to dramatically limit its enrichment of uranium in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. In the time since, Iran has abandoned all the limits of the deal and drastically reduced the ability of international inspectors to keep watch over their program. While Iran insists its program is peaceful, the U.S. intelligence agencies, Western inspectors, and others say Tehran has a structured military nuclear weapons program through the end of 2003. President Joe Biden has said he's willing to re-enter the nuclear deal, but talks in Vienna have stalled as a hardline protege of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei took over as president. Biden sending a B-1 bomber over the region allows him to send a clear message of reassurance to regional allies, as the U.S. Air Force Central Command put it on Twitter, but it doesn't involve a nuclear-capable bomber. The B-1B came from the 37th Bomb Squadron at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. Reuters headliner, U.S. says it is in talks with allies on getting Iran to agree to nuclear deal. Dated October 31st, 2021. The United States was absolutely in lockstep with Britain, Germany, and France on getting Iran back into a nuclear deal, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday. But he added it was unclear if Tehran was willing to join the talks in a meaningful way. Blinken's remarks in an interview with CNN on Sunday come a day after the United States, Germany, France, and Britain urged Iran to resume compliance with a 2015 nuclear deal in order to avoid a dangerous escalation. The accord, under which Iran curtailed nuclear work seen as a risk of developing nuclear weapons in exchange for a lifting of global sanctions, unraveled in 2018 after then President Trump withdrew the United States. Really depends on whether Iran is serious about doing that, Blinken said on Iran joining the nuclear talks. All of our countries, working, by the way, with Russia and China, believe strongly that would be the best path forward, he added. The nuclear deal is not the only point of contention between Iran and the United States. On Friday, the United States issued a fresh round of Iran-related sanctions tied to an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps drone program that it said threatened regional stability. Leaders of the United States, Britain, France, and Germany hoping to persuade Iran from stopping their enriched uranium program to near-grade weapons said on Saturday they wanted to negotiate a solution. But we do not yet know whether Iran is willing to come back to engage in a meaningful way, Blinken said. But if it won't, then we are looking together at all the options necessary to deal with the problem. Iran's foreign minister said separately on Sunday that if the United States was serious about rejoining Tehran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers, Biden could just issue an executive order, the state-owned Iran newspaper reported. It is enough for Biden to issue an executive order tomorrow, and they announced they are rejoining the pact from the point where his predecessor left the deal. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amirabdollahian said, there is a serious will in Washington to return to the deal. There is no need for all these negotiations at all. Talks between Iran and world powers aimed at salvaging the deal, which started in April, are slated to resume at the end of November, the Islamic Republic's top nuclear negotiator said on Wednesday. The Straits Times headliner, Iran suspects Israel and U.S. behind fuel cyber attack dated October 31st, 2021. An Iranian general has said Israel and the U.S. were likely to have been behind a cyber attack that interrupted the distribution of fuel at service stations. Last Tuesday's attack technically resembles two previous incidents whose perpetrators were unquestionably our enemies, namely the United States and the Zionist regime, the Revolutionary Guard's Gol Mazira Jalal said. We have analyzed two incidents, the railway accident and the Shahid Rajir report accident. We found that they were similar. Jalal, who leads a civil defense unit responsible for cyber activity, told state television late on Saturday. In July, Iran's transportation ministry said a cyber disruption had affected its computer systems and website, according to Fars news agency. And in May last year, the Washington Post reported that Israel carried out a cyber attack on the Iranian port of Shahid Rajeh in the Straits of Hormuz, a strategic route for global oil shipments. Tuesday's cyber attack caused traffic jams on major arteries in Tehran, where long queues at petrol stations disrupted the flow of traffic. The oil ministry later took service stations offline so that petrol could be distributed manually, according to the authorities. President Ibrahim Raisi last Wednesday, accused the perpetrators of trying to turn Iran's people against the leadership of the Islamic Republic. Around 3,200 of the country's 4,300 service stations have since been reconnected to the central distribution system. Other stations also provide fuel for motorists, but at subsidized rates that make it twice as expensive and around 5 euro cents per litre, the news agency reported. In a country where petrol flows freely and what are some of the lowest prices in the world, motorists need digital cards issued by the authorities. Since 2010, when Iran's nuclear program was hit by the Stuxnet computer virus, Iran and its arch foes, Israel and the U.S., have regularly accused each other of cyber attacks. That's the latest news. Now, my thoughts. if the United States was serious about having negotiations with Iran and leaders of the government and the Islamic Republic, they wouldn't need to show force by flying nuclear bombers over a country. That only leads them to believe that they're showing off or that they're antagonizing their preconceived enemy into a fight that has no winner, whether it's the United States coalition, Israel and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf team up, in which Iran would be the loser here. The United States would also lose, and so would the people of the country of the United States. Economically, each war costs us more and more and more. Bin Laden had once said that the reason for the attacks on September 11, 2001 was to draw the United States into another Soviet-styled war that would leave a country economically depleted. Well, $2.3 trillion, and after 20 years, what did we accomplish? Nothing. Yes, we decimated the Taliban, and yes, we decimated Al-Qaeda, but now they're on the rebound because we didn't decimate them or we didn't liquidate them. We kept them around because they're useful proxies for the war on terror, which could go on and on and on. And the only people who benefit are the coffers, the lobbyists, those who have a financial vested interest as well as a geopolitical interest, which are people within the foreign policy program as well as the Pentagon, who map out these wars 10 to 15 years in advance. They're looking at the long-term goals, and they don't care who doesn't benefit. Global hegemony in the region will be threatened forever if we decide to go about this war, which would basically pit Sunni against Shia, Zionist against Persian, U.S. war against peace, that the real antagonists are the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. They don't care for regional hegemony. They only care about how fat their pockets get.